All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Exposing Powerful Lies. Glad to be here today. Super excited for this one. Next guest doesn't need any introduction, but some of you might not know this guest today. We have David Patrick Harry from Church of the Eternal Logos. Probably everybody in the chat knows who this guy is, but not everybody in my audience knows who he is. So if you don't know, Church of the Eternal Logos makes educational content for Christendom and non-believers, but approached from an Orthodox Christian perspective. Topics covered include everything from Christian apologetics, philosophy, theology, history, and mysticism. This guy is one of the best people we have right now in the Orthodox YouTube sphere, making top-tier content, and I absolutely am very honored to have him come on our show today. He used to have a sort of neo-Gnostic, perennialist, sort of neo-pagan type channel, and as we all know, these things are very popular, right? This sort of new age mysticism, spirituality, the universe, and everything's one, and you're going to get everything you've ever wanted. This is the stuff that people want to hear. And then his channel had like 80,000 subscribers. He came to understand that the truth is a who, not a what, that the truth is Jesus Christ. He gave that up and he started a new channel. It's slow growing, as any channel would be that talks about this stuff. And it's something that I have a lot of respect for him for. He still has the channel, but he doesn't really make content anymore. He's transformed it into something else. So we're going to get his take on that and his description of that. But it is a sacrifice, because had he kept that channel and kept pumping out the content that is widely appealing, who knows how many subscribers he had. That brought him in money. That brought him in subscribers and viewers. He gave that up and started producing Orthodox Christian content. That to me shows real integrity, and that's something that I respect greatly. So let's bring on David Patrick Harry from Church of the Eternal Logos. Welcome, David. Thank you for being here, brother.
Thank you very much, Jerry. That was a great introduction. I'm very humbled to have such kind words, and congratulations to you on being newly illumined. You have just been brought into the ancient faith.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, I do great introductions because I'm an e-diva and a rising celebrity. You know what I mean? I met this guy at church today who we're talking about side hustles, and I go, yeah, YouTube's my side hustle. He goes, oh, what's your channel called? I said, Exposing Powerful Lies. He goes, that's you? Dude, you're an e-diva or e-celebrity. I'm like, not really, bro. Not really. But that made me feel good. You know what I mean?
Hey, but did he see your handle from the various live chats, I take it?
He goes, I asked him, I said, where you know me from? He's like, oh, Jay Dyer, Church of the Eternal Logos. So I'm like, all right. So, I want you to know how much I appreciate you guys, letting me moderate and letting us moderate, because it does help us out a lot. And it's also just very nice to be able to contribute something to the work. You know, I always say I'm a slow boy. I'm not one of these high IQ guys like y'all, but it feels good to participate, right? To participate for those who can. And it's a beautiful thing. And so I'm very honored that you'd come on to our humble channel and talk to me about some of the work that you're doing, how you got into Orthodoxy, and really stuff, just a bunch of stuff in general. I got some notes here. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey from your old channel to your new channel and just kind of that whole thing.
Yeah, so old channel to new channel. The old channel, in the summer of 2015, I created a channel called Fractal Universe, spelled Youniverse, so your universe. And the idea was to promote the use of psychedelics and the sort of spiritual places psychedelics take you, using various drugs and various ceremonies, various contexts, and various rituals. So I promoted a lot of people like Terence McKenna, Timothy Leary, Aldous Huxley, Robert Anton Wilson, and in my mind at that time, so I have a background in religious studies, and I was halfway through my master's degree at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. And I felt like psychedelics and all the experiences I was having was sort of the leading edge of religion. And that if you're going to look into religion and look at all the various religions, I felt like the 20th century sort of rediscovery or popularization of psychedelics and drugs was the sort of frontier of what religion is, that it was the basis of religions, looking back at archaic shamanism, and that every sort of organized religion was just a sober, de-psychedelized variation of these experiences, and that you could then reinterpret the psychedelic experiences back into all the different world religions. And
just for the record, you did not have dreadlocks, right? Just want to get the record. Dreadlocks.
What's that?
Dreadlocks?
Yeah.
I was just making a joke.
Oh, what is it?
Like the hippie hair?
Oh, dreadlocks. I thought you were saying drug bots.
Drug bots? No, dreadlocks, bro.
No, I never had dreadlocks. I basically look the same way I do now, different haircut and no beard. So the beard's an Orthodox thing. I actually grew this thing out starting with Montanica last year. So my girlfriend went and saw her in California. She told me not to shave. And then Montanica, I flew from LA to Montana. And so haven't really not had a beard since. But no, I never had dreadlocks.
Okay.
Never really got into the hippie movement per se, though I was very interested in the psychedelics, for sure.
Yeah, you seem to came at it from a more intellectual sort of scholarly approach, right? As you said, you believe that it was the cutting edge of religion and spirituality, which I think a lot of us can sort of empathize with that. A lot of us were, at that point in our lives where we really thought like, this is what all the religions were about. This is like the spiritual experience. This is mysticism. Yeah. And so I definitely...
So you experimented with some of the psychedelics?
A lot of them.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your experience with those.
Okay. I am getting a little bit of an echo, just so you know. So I am not sure if you can maybe like ride the mute or turn down a little bit, just because I don't know how that's coming through on the other end. But yeah, so...
I don't hear anything.
Yeah, I'm getting it on my end. Hopefully it's not coming through. But so I started smoking weed when I was 11 years old with my brother.
Wow.
Yeah, so I started drugs very early, which is partially why I'm such a slow boy today, I'm sure. And started smoking cigarettes when I was 13. And then basically once I got into high school, I got acid for my freshman year. So that was the first time I ever tried that. Wow. And we had a group of like 15 people that would have group trips all the time. And we would do mushrooms or acid or the research chemicals, 2CB, 2CE, all of that, Molly, all of that stuff. So
yeah, that's a lot of Alexander Shulgin. He created a lot of those things.
Exactly. Yeah, we knew all about TCAL, PCAL. We were psychonauts,
Exactly.
We called ourselves the space cadets.
Because you were.
Yes. So yeah, we were very much into that, and I believed that this stuff was like a religious sacrament. That's what I used to say. This stuff is like a sacrament, bro.
Right.
And I think it is. I just think it's like a satanic sacrament. You know what
Right.
I mean? But yeah, so we were very much about opening your mind, expanding consciousness, and having experiences. And I feel like that's sort of the focus that you see a lot of these hippies or even just psychonauts focus on, is that it's experiential. It's like, I experienced God, right? I experienced
Right.
oneness. And I think it's interesting to compare like Orthodoxy, where they tell us to basically be skeptical of imaginative experiences or charismatic experiences, things like that, because this is sort of the battleground is your imagination, where you can be deceived and tricked and fall into things like pre-lest. So
Yeah, I totally agree with that. One of the things that's a lot of my academic work right now is dealing with psychedelics. So I'm trying to categorize the paradigm of psychedelic spirituality or mysticism, and this has been described by various scholars in different ways. For example, Walter Hanegraaff, he's considered one of the top scholars in regards to Western esoteric traditions, and he wrote his dissertation on the New Age, and um, basically has the book categorizing the New Age and all the literature related to and the development of and how they understand various things. And he is described in Theogenic Esotericism about how the use of these entheogens, which is a rebranding of the term psychedelic comes from Humphrey Osmond, psychiatrist. It means mind manifesting. And
okay.
theogenic comes from the classicist Carl A.P. Ruck and company. That means the revelation of God within. So it clearly has a sort of theological connotation, the transition in terminology. But he talks about how it really comes out of the Western esoteric traditions. And I do believe that to be the case. And so, I'll be defending some of my personal research this coming, not tomorrow, but a week after tomorrow, April 25th, to a panel of scholars. And that's what I'll be looking at is I attempted to trace the practice and the ritualistic use of drugs for spiritual purposes in the Western world. So people know about the ayahuasca and the ayahuasca cults of the Amazon and all this stuff, but
Alessinian Mysteries, that sort of thing.
exactly. So
Yeah.
beginning with the Alessinian Mysteries, which we see the Alessanian Mysteries are a perfect transition point from what would we consider like shamanism or tribal religious structures, because the Alessanian Mysteries come from the Minoan Crete civilization, and Minoan Crete is one of the last remnants of goddess worship in the Western world. And so goddess worship is really important and central often to the use of psychedelics and psychedelic spirituality. And I think we again can see this in the contemporary period. But my research, even though online I do a lot of apologetics, my research is not value laden. So I do not place any values, good or bad, on the use of psychedelics. Now, I obviously have my own personal opinions, but just to do scholastic research, I'm presenting information to people that have a variety of different opinions, some that are very enthusiastic about the future and prospects of using these substances. So, I've been trying to trace from the shamanistic period to Alessinian Mysteries, really beginning with the Alessanian Mysteries, and then showing how, according to various church fathers, you can look at Irenaeus, you can look at Epiphanius, you can see how they describe various Gnostic groups actually outright claiming that they are the continuation of the Alessanian Mysteries, but now sort of rebranded in a Christian context. And so when we look at psychedelics and how it's believed that they make you one with God, we can obviously see then how that translates over to our understandings of the Eucharist.
Mm.
And so the ways in which these psychedelic drugs were understood, I think, um, my research then is trying to show how these are different paradigms, because if we don't look at paradigms and presuppositions, it looks like that, well, that Christianity may just be a sort of sober psychedelic religion, but that then negates an understanding of the first seven ecumenical councils, that negates the understanding of boundaries and morality and all these different things that Orthodoxy and Christianity, generally speaking, what it was defending itself from in regards to Gnosticism. So long way around just to say that a lot of my research then is tracing academically drug use through the ancient period into Western civilization. It's not as prevalent within Byzantium, although there's plenty of evidence of Gnostic groups within the empire of the Byzantine Empire that were participating in some of these substances. And so, like this book right here, The Paulician Heresy, this was a group of Gnostics over in Armenia. And so it's really interesting to see how some of these Gnostics that were being persecuted by the Byzantine Empire found refuge, if you will, in the Caucasus region, because it was a sort of natural buffer zone between the Persian Empire, specifically the Sasanian Empire, and before them, the Parthian Empire. But the Parthian Empire was Mithraic, and so they were very open to the use of inebriating substances. And part of my research then has been tracing the Vedic religion of Soma, the ancient Vedic religion, the basis of Hinduism, the Rig Veda, and looking how the Soma ritual was actually the oldest evidence of its practice exists in Armenia. So then that puts a whole new context in looking at these Gnostic groups that were sort of found refuge in Armenia during the 5th to 8th, 9th centuries. Before then, they were pushed into Bulgaria, another country that wasn't actually Orthodox, that they converted later. And they also had a historical practice of mushroom use. And then they had their own Gnostics called the Bogomils. And both the Paulicians and the Bogomils then had an incredible influence on the Cathars, which then were in Western Europe, southern France, southern Germany, northern Italy. And we can see then how it's most likely all the frescoes that exist now in Western Europe of Christianity using mushrooms.
Right.
Well, we can have a better understanding of how that comes about. And so I personally don't know of any scholar who's put all these things together, but this has been part of my research of trying to trace how do these things emerge, because my argument is that they're totally different paradigms. So the evidence of mushroom use within Western Europe isn't indicative of Christianity itself being a psychedelic religion.
Right.
It's indicative of a group of people who identified as Christians in certain ways using certain substances, but how did they get there?
Right. People who sort of put on the costume, if you will, or put on the facade of Christianity, but who are really, as you say, coming from a completely different paradigm. I think it's interesting how you can kind of look throughout history and see that sort of that line of these different groups all using these sort of psychedelic or entheogenic compounds. And they all are operating from the sort of polar opposite paradigm of what Christianity teaches. So it's almost like throughout history, you've got all of these seemingly different groups, right? But they all have this sort of connecting line, which is sort of a displacing of God and putting man where God should be. And I the way I see it is Luciferian or satanic, right? It's sort of an inversion of Christianity. So I find that very fascinating. And I know I've talked with Tristan before about sort of the way that mushrooms were used by certain like Aztec cultures and stuff with sacrifices and I find that very interesting and very demonic, you know?
Yeah, I think it can definitely open up to the demonic. That's clearly more crystallized within the Aztec tradition.
Yeah.
But the psychedelics, obviously human sacrifice and stuff like that wasn't always indicative of. So it's been really interesting because the Soma ritual is tied to the Indo-Europeans, and the Indo-Europeans have had exerted an incredible influence on world history. And so the Indo-Europeans conquered what we would consider the Indian subcontinent. And so that's where the Rig Veda and all the Vedic religion gets going. And that's why then in Iran, or what we would consider Persia at the time, Indo-Iranian is really just the Indo-European branch of the Persian peoples, and Armenia, Indo-Armenian, that is its own branch. So obviously the whole thing about Hitler was that he was looking at the history of the Indo-European peoples and seeing how prominent they were in all really the major societies and language groups. He just particularly believed that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Germanic branch of the Indo-European tree was the sort of epitome of eugenics, evolution, all this type of stuff. But as you're talking about the Aztecs and the human sacrifice, I think, you can, because I want to make the most, part of what my research I'm trying to do is what can I say cataphatically or positively about the paradigm of psychedelics that is most generally true.
Right.
And so, obviously, from a Christian standpoint, we would say that it opens you up to the sort of spiritual noumenal realm that you can, what we would say, access the demonic. And in a way, it is usually tied to a sort of left-handed path. So even aspects, eventually Soma gets lost within the Indian subcontinent, and it's now, ganja smoking, all this different stuff. There's still different practices of inebriation, and these are more moved towards the left-handed path. So you see sex. One of the general characteristics is like sexual promiscuity is almost always indicative or related to the ritualistic use of drugs.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that as you dive into the historical use, you can see that play itself out over and over and over again, is that ritualistic drug use and ritualistic understandings of sex, or more promiscuous understandings of sex from a Christian context, seem to go hand in hand.
Right.
So I think that somebody like Terence McKenna, there's a couple ideas that he has that I actually totally agree with.
Really?
One being that psychedelics dissolve boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the work of somebody like a Jacques Derrida in the 20th century, he's sort of the father of deconstructionism and postmodernism and all this different stuff in his books, Grammatology. And there's another book up there. The title of it's passing me. I pardon me. But the main understanding is that Western civilization is built on a presupposition of what he calls foul logocentrism, which is then a series of boundaries that are set up. And these boundaries then privilege the masculine, which then conforms to these boundaries. It privileges this concept of logos, and then it privileges this concept of centering, so that the masculine, the logos understanding, this metaphysical principle developed throughout Greek philosophy, it is the centering force. And so then all of society and people need to move towards that centered. He was interested in doing away, pushing in opposition. So you see then feminism, the dissolving of boundaries, and what they call marginality as really, really important, because that's what's eventually going to push against what they call the foul logocentrism. And really, I don't disagree. So again, I agree with Derrida. I think that foul logocentrism is the central pillar of Western civilization or Christendom.
Sure.
And I think that Terence McKenna is right, that psychedelics do dissolve boundaries. And that's why then you see psychedelic societies tend to move towards nature worship, goddess worship, sexual promiscuity from a Christian standpoint. And then what you were identifying with the sort of Luciferian, satanic sort of apotheosis, the understanding that I am God.
Right.
So the looking at deities and how much one perceives as sort of monotheism or something like that gets really tricky with the psychedelics, because the concept of God gets more and more abstract as we move forward in history, per se. You have the Mithraic cults that worship Mithras, which was an androgyne god.
Right.
And then you can look at Eleusis, where it's a whole festival regarding Demeter and Persephone going to the underworld. And it's the understanding of regeneration. It's the understanding of being born again, right? So you can look, this is what the secular scholars, they look at these things, say, oh, look, see, Christianity, it's just like the cult of Eleusis, because they're talking about the regeneration of death and how Persephone goes to Hades, and it's the foul logocentrism because Christ is male and he's not female like Persephone, and then they used ritualistic inebriating substances there, but they just use wine, which was really spiked by Amanita muscarius at some point, and
Yes.
this whole concept.
And I know you've talked about logos spermaticos and how you feel that a lot of the sort of similarities, right, may be from these cultures sort of having an incomplete understanding of God, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's one of the beautiful things about Orthodoxy is, one, we don't make any claims about people's salvation. So we are the true church. We believe in revelation, and we have a singular epistemology, obviously logos, to understand what is true and what is false. But the age old question. Oh, so the Taoist monk on Wudong Mountain who's never heard of Christ, he's condemned eternally to hell then, right?
Right.
Because God's a bouncer, and he looks and says, oh, your name's not on the list, you're out of here.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, Orthodoxy teaches in these energies, and that somebody, again, that's why the church doesn't make claims about
Yeah.
people's salvation, unlike the Catholic Church and unlike Protestants.
Well, Christ is
So
the judge, right?
exactly, Christ is the judge. So is it feasible? I don't know, that a man who's never heard of Christ, that lives according to the objective moral standard of Christ's teachings, whether he knew Christ or not, Paul says it's written on your heart,
Exactly.
that he lived, a sort of ascetic life up in a mountain, and that maybe when we both reach judgment, he's filled with the energies more than I am.
Yeah, the concept of the noble pagan, right? The noble pagan.
You're right. So
No, I
go
agree.
ahead.
I think that Orthodoxy absolutely has the most. I mean, I believe it's the true church. I believe that it has the most, the fullness of the truth, right? In its theology and in its explanation of a lot of these things, which is what I really enjoy about your channel and a lot of these channels that we've seen come up. Not all of them have arrived in the last few years, but we've seen sort of a flourishing of channels like you and Jay and Tristan and Brother Augustine and Father Deacon, and then all of the smaller channels popping up of good people trying to point the way to the truth and say, hey, look, we were once there where you were at. We were once sort of in these sort of new age or just sort of vague, the universe, man, sort of ideas, seeking after truth and hungering after truth. Right. And we found the truth in Christ and in Christ's, ancient church. And I really appreciate the work that you do, and that's the main reason why I wanted to have you on, is just to have you sort of share some of the work that you've been doing. It's why I really like you talking about your research, because I do find that fascinating. And as you said, you're not putting value judgments necessarily on it in your research. So right. I hear you talking about a lot of like the psychedelics and stuff, and it definitely makes me wonder, like, so are you, it makes me want to assume, like, so are you saying that you believe there's a good use for these things or not? But I understand you're just kind of coming at it from a scientific sort of objective standpoint.
Yeah. So I don't, as a scholar, it would, because the goal of my research is, I hopefully, again, God willing, maybe be published by a university press. So the goal is to write something that is so objective that people from two different ends of worldviews can look at it and both say, yep, that's it. That's it right there.
And if we posit that Christ is the truth, right, then we shouldn't fear that sort of approach, right? Because the truth is the truth. And right. I believe that the truth is ultimately going to point to Christ, right? No matter what. So be as objective as you want, because in my life, certainly all of the truth that I've found has pointed me towards God, towards Christ.
Exactly. And so later in my career, like once I get this dissertation done, once I hopefully am able to get it published, once I can move forward, it's not like I don't put out my personal opinion through, Codal, Church of the Eternal Logos, and some of my online stuff. I do. And I always want to make it, I always want to try to steelman the opposite arguments. That way people, if they come across my stuff, they certainly may not be believers or be coming from something the same perspective I am, but if I can at least present information in a way to show them that I'm well aware of everything that they're going to argue and what they believe, and this is why I think it falls short, I think it's a much more effective apologetic approach.
It is. It's refreshing, man. It's refreshing, especially because, I mean, Christianity in America is so lacking, at least from when I grew up, sort of this Protestant Roman Catholic, that's all I knew, right? I grew up in Christianity, and when I came to Orthodoxy, I mean, I knew a lot of the stories from the Bible. I knew a lot of stuff from Sunday school, but I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't really know the sort of meat and potatoes, really intelligent, nuanced, complex theology that really drew me in, and it was the first time I had ever even come across a lot of these concepts, right? And so I feel like a lot of people, when they think of Christianity, they think they already understand it. They think of like Ned Flanders or like, this like really cringy, like worship band in some, Protestant church, like Jesus. And they don't actually know what it is, and so that I find it very refreshing to see you and Jay do these sort of deep dives in these nuanced theological issues, because as you said, a lot of people, appreciate that. A lot of people, this might be the first time that they're even coming across these things.
Right. And so the way that I look at my YouTube channel, or at least my online presence, is a sort of bridge. Is I think about who I was, let's say 5 years ago. So that'd have been 2017. I'd have been, making money off YouTube, promoting a lot of these ideas, entering into my PhD program, and was very convinced of it. And so the only thing that I would have listened to was somebody who's already done all those experiences, been to those ceremonies, taken those drugs, and then has already read all those books.
Right.
And then if they had a different opinion than I did, I'd be like, well, how did you get there? Let me hear, why don't you believe in all the things that I believe? Because I've done those things and I've read those books, and this is why I believe it. So my goal is to build basically a conceptual bridge that if somebody was interested, because I think that's one of the commonalities, as you talked about, this Orthodox stuff, is people come to Orthodoxy in a pursuit of truth that are willing to have their minds changed. And so I had a particular opinion. I believe this to be true, and I've come across information that now contradicts that, and I believe the new information to be truer, and now I move on. And this is then the journey I think most people go on to Orthodoxy. And for a lot of people, they've come to a conclusion that they have the truth, whether that be, it could be the psychedelics, and that psychedelics are sort of the millenarian utopia that's going to bring us into the future and revamp and shape society.
Yeah.
But I go ahead.
I think that that's sort of the dividing line too, that I tend to see, is that, as you said, there's people, most of us at some point felt that we had found the truth, whether it was through psychedelics. A lot of it was through the psychedelics, right? We've been enlightened. We've had our consciousness is raised and expanded. We've found the truth. But there's this choice that happens when you are confronted with something that doesn't fit that paradigm, is especially if you're doing online work, right? I got 80,000 subscribers. I'm making money doing this, right? And a lot of people we see go into that sort of grifter path of they ignore everything else and they just focus on the message that they know succeeds in making them money and getting them pragmatic, practical results, right? And I think that is the dividing line, is, do you care about the truth, or do you care about, XYZ effect in the world or result?
Right.
And
absolutely. And I tell people when we do one-on-ones that, because so many people, obviously I'm sort of noted as the psychedelic Orthodox guy. And so people who've had a similar background as myself will chat. And one of the things I always tell people is that, the truth will set you free, right? And knowledge is power. And if you seek, you will find. But that comes with great responsibility. As Peter Parker's grandmother told him, that God will show you, again, if you're really in pursuit of truth. Like, I have no doubt that if you began to pray or you began to read, like, you have to invest energy. You have to do things in the world for God then to show you the next stepping stone.
Yeah.
And as you do that, you will be given knowledge. But now your judgment's based on what you're going to do with it. So as you go on that journey, it becomes laden with more responsibility of what you're going to do with it.
Yes.
Because now you do have eyes to see and ears to hear. And that's the daunting part, because when you when you eventually come back to Christianity or come back to Orthodoxy, it's very difficult to first make that leap. It's easier to make it intellectually. It's much more difficult to make it spiritually and religiously and devotionally.
Sure.
And that's where we all struggle.
We're so sick, on a soul level, like humanity is. We really do. We find it very hard to do good, and we find it enjoyable to do evil. A lot of us, that's so many of the prayers that we say, is repenting for delighting in sin and delighting in evil. And that's really the core illness of fallen humanity, I feel like, is that we are so distorted, so twisted from where we're supposed to be, so enslaved by the passions. And I think it really comes from just a spiritual immaturity of being, newly created beings, and sort of just trying to figure out the training wheels, right? Like, can you come into contact with something that feels good, but that might destroy you if you do it. Can you have that sort of ability and control to be like, I'm not going to destroy myself just to get my kumis, right? I'm not just going to like, so yeah.
Yeah. So I think the pursuit of truth is the thing that brings most people to orthodoxy. So it's ironic that, some of the better friends that I've made on this journey, they're already covered in tattoos. They've done a lot of drugs. They've had a lot of life experience.
Yeah.
But there's always this pursuit of truth, and often they had a curious mind, so they got into some of the conspiracy theories. They got into Eastern mysticism. They got into different aspects of world religions, and they dove into it. And I think that's the difference you were talking about, sort of giving up on the old YouTube channel. I think I was so sincere in the ways that I thought psychedelics were the sort of the ultimate, um, the philosopher's stone. Like, it was the ultimate rock of religion. And that's why I was very into high doses. I think that when I look at some of the other content creators, I imagine they probably weren't taking drugs as frequently and as uh, heavily as I was in the pursuit of these noumenal spiritual realms to try to contact entities and acquire gnosis and better understand reality. I mean, I was driven by that.
Right.
And so that was the whole point. And when I wasn't producing content, I was always reading books. Now, it's from a very different very different mindset than I have now, but I had an insatiable appetite for learning, to know things, and to take substances to experience them.
And
that's
why you're here, now doing the channel that you are, because it was sincere and you weren't a grifter, right? And I feel like that's kind of where all of us were. We were all seeking truth fervently, right? And as you said, like, knocking the door will be open. If you seek truth, you're actually developing a relationship with God, because God is the truth. And so it's that simple sort of striving to know the truth from a sincere place that of course is going to bring you to God, because God is the truth,
Right. Absolutely. And so it's funny from my personal journey. It was like diving deeply into these psychedelics. I eventually became disillusioned because I was taking, I was able to get my hands on everything that I wanted. So I was able to take as much as I wanted of certain things. And what the realms that I was promised, the self-transforming machine elves, all this different, it's like they weren't coming for me. I wasn't being able, and I look back, was that providence? Was that me being protected by the Holy Spirit? I don't understand how or why it wasn't as efficacious for me as other people, but deep high levels of LSD, to have sort of Satori, the Buddhist understanding of a sort of intellectual enlightenment. That's what I felt like I'd receive from the LSD. I do high dose mushrooms with eyes closed, silent darkness, to try to contact the voice of the mushroom or the gnomes or the elves or whatever it was that McKenna talked about. And I'd get really cool colors. I'd get tracers. I'd have a lot of sacred geometry with eyes closed, but never entities. And so it was funny how that I was getting almost frustrated that I wasn't getting to the realms that I wanted to. And eventually it was diving into the research that I'm doing now, reading the book, The Psychedelic Gospels, coming across the mushrooms within Christian frescoes, believing that this was the true origin of Christianity, and then writing a paper on that, diving deeper and deeper and deeper, and coming to new understanding. So Orthodoxy came about because after writing a paper on the Psychedelic Gospels, I took a course with the Greek Orthodox Church on Orthodox Church history and theology. And I thought, because the iconography, because Slavic people tend to have a different relationship to mushrooms, mushroom picking, linguistically, they have hundreds of words for mushrooms, that I was definitely going to find iconography where the mushrooms are going to be present, as it was in those evidences of southern France, southern Germany, Italy. And it didn't appear, but what it did appear was this concept of logos and logos theology. And so it was funny how through my own sinful adventures, those sincere and misguided, I eventually came to the understanding of God, that I didn't immediately convert or become a believer, but everything, the more I thought about it, the more dots it connected, the more it made sense. It put a better picture together. And I remember by the end of that semester and even into that summer and then beginning the next semester, I always told people, oh, well, I'm still kind of spiritual, but not religious. But if I was religious, I definitely, probably look into this logos theology. I probably worship the logos.
Right.
And it wasn't until, prayer. I remember that fall, I began to start praying again before bed. And that's when there's sort of acceleration of what you would call synchronicities, or we would call providence, that started to accelerate. And so the praying and seeing aspects of the culture and the sort of culture war that's still in full bloom, it was putting a lot of things into context for me. And I remember, ironically, it was a 3-year, I think 3 years on the day when I did a stream with Allison from A Devotional Heart that
was an excellent stream.
Yeah, on 11/11/2018, that was when I just came, and that was after a few more psychedelic sessions. I just came to the conclusion that as we said, you sort of pursue knowledge. Knowledge will set you free. The truth will set you free. Knowledge is power. That I couldn't unsee what I felt like I was seeing. And therefore, the sincerity, that's why then I just didn't have the heart to continue to create the content I was creating, because even though, even some of my early YouTube videos I'm not a believer in the full sense. I mean, I'm still working through all this stuff, and that's why I leave it up. I've had people try to accuse me of promoting Gnosticism on my channel and all this different stuff. I've had one group claim that I have a psychedelic cult that pretends to be Orthodox. I mean, some of the attacks have been crazy, but
yeah,
I leave it up there because Church of the Eternal Logos, and they also accused me of creating a cult because I called it Church of the Eternal Logos. Right. The point was just to do live streams and do videos from the vantage point of all this logos theology that I had acquired and developed, so then I could explain why I'm seeing the world the way that I'm now seeing it. Sure. And that's what I do with any of my streams anyways. That's all I'm doing, is just using what I believe to be logos theology of the Eastern Orthodox, the true Christian church of the first millennia, and trying to use that as a lens of interpretation to then look at the world or look at different aspects and re-understand it. And that's what the Church of the Eternal Logos is. It's just using the ancient theology of logos, developed from the Greeks, revealed to the Jews, brought together in the New Testament, and look at the world. And if that makes sense to you, then maybe you should check out another stream. Maybe, listen to a little bit more, because that's the whole thing that it did for me, is the more you dive down this rabbit hole, if you will, it's like God connects the dots to a point where you can't really go back.
Right.
And if you go back, again, that's your judgment. And you can, and I know many people have probably have. And that's the other part about this Orthodox thing, is it's really difficult. Like, you're just got baptized. You're probably going to have a lot of wild experiences in the next month or so that are going to try to bring you back to various things, habits that you've tried to get rid of, because that's the nature of Orthodoxy. Is it's really difficult, and spiritual warfare is very real, and it's a ebb and flow process. This isn't a straight linear trajectory. It's not easy. And so, for everybody I know, this whole Orthodox thing, it's like this, you're better at it. Sometimes you're worse at it. And that's the whole point of repentance. And that's really why, it's a real thing. It's difficult. It's like lifting weights. It's a real exercise, but this is your spiritual reality.
And that's what's so insidious about a lot of these so-called Christianities, right? These sort of heresies, schisms, these little groups, is they give you the easy road. Tell you, just believe in Christ. That's all it takes, right? Christ says, believe in me and you shall have eternal life, right? But to truly believe in Christ, to truly recognize the divinity of Christ, would mean that you would have faith in Christ, meaning that you'd follow the commandments and do what he said. And he didn't just say, believe in me. That's one sentence, right? There's a whole lot more there. And I feel like a lot of these Protestants or what have you, they preach this sort of nice, pleasant sounding theology, prosperity gospel, all of this stuff. because it's practical. It brings people in. It's nice. It's soothing. And Orthodoxy, as you said, is very difficult, and it's
Right.
a real battle. And we find it so difficult because we're so prideful and sinful, and we've grown to put our faith in ourselves our entire life, to think like, I got this, I can do this, right? And then when you
Right.
actually start to engage in the spiritual warfare, it's like, no, I don't got this. I'm weak. I'm sinful. I'm wretched. Like, I
Right.
need to get all of my faith outside of me and put it all in God, and sort of run and cling to Christ and
Right.
follow Christ's commandments, because I do not have the sort of skills or weapons equipped to defeat this enemy. I really have to follow my Father, which is God.
Right. And that's why, even for the psychedelics, everybody looks at the shaman as the healer, that's his real function in the tribe, and psychedelics are how he gets command over the spirits. Well, Christ is the physician of souls. And you talk about some of these Protestant churches, and a lot of people we're all broken and we all need healing. A lot of people assume that the healing then must feel really good, it must be really good, it must be really easy because I'm broken and all this is painful. But really, if you've ever actually hurt something and you actually need real healing, like you break a leg or something, like it's actually very painful, the healing process. And so that is orthodoxy.
Right.
That
I'm
is
glad you.
that is a repentful heart. That is actually trying to do the spiritual warfare and the spiritual battle.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because I definitely wanted to talk about that. From the standpoint that we are all broken, we are all sick, and the church is a hospital, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like a lot of people, when they're on the journey to truth, they're focusing on the problem. They're focusing on the evil, whether it's Gil Bates or Jeff Steineffrey, or the elites, or this or that, and they focus on sort of the symptoms of evil in the world, but they don't get the medicine, which comes from the church. And the
Right.
medicine isn't, people want this like super quick, like drink a potion and it's fixed, say a spell and it's fixed, right? Do a prayer and it's fixed. And they don't realize, like you said, that it takes time and it takes real work and effort. We come to the church and we get the medicine. We actually commune with God. We commune with Christ and with his church. And that sort of gives us the medicine, it gives us the training, but then we actually have to leave the church and do the actual work in our real lives. And it's the cross that saves, right? It's Christ and the cross and his cross that is what heals and saves us. It's actually picking that cross up and carrying it, which is like the most difficult thing that us fallen people can do. But that's what actually does it, not the okay, I just say I love Jesus, so now I'm healed, right? That's yeah.
Right. And that's and that's another, a lot of people who intellectually convert to orthodoxy and realize it's the true historical church are pretty disappointed once they come to it. And especially you look at what happened in 2020 with the pandemic. Orthodoxy didn't fare very well, and it didn't respond very well to a very obvious well, I'm not even going to go into it, but
well, I'd say that the true Orthodoxy did, right? Like we have real priests out there that did stand up. We have real groups of faithful
and
people.
same with Protestant ministers. So it's hard to decipher. To me, it would be the people who are most filled with the energies, right?
Right.
And agreed, we had some great. I mean, everybody on patristic faith all saw it for what it was.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, especially the hierarchs, not so much.
Right.
And so the hierarchs, not so much. But at the same time, if we're still Orthodox, we would say, well, that's why they need to be Orthodox, right? That the most broken people, the most sinful people actually need to be in the church. And so if the church is filled with sick people, I've heard people complain about, dating life or people inside Orthodoxy. And I definitely hear and I definitely understand the difficulties in those spheres. But at the same time, if they're that bad, I mean, thank God they're in the church then, right? Isn't that the point?
Right. Exactly. People are they
Yeah.
love to judge, man. People love to judge and look at other people because they're really trying to distract themselves from looking in their own hearts. And I mean, Christ tells us, but the log in our eye and the splinter in our brother's eye. And it really comes from this pride. They say the root of all sin is pride. And it's this idea that we can judge, like that we're good. I'm not a saint, but like I'm not that bad, like I'm not one of these guys. Like this guy's doing this and this guy's doing that. And when you actually do start to look inward, you start to see all that darkness in your own heart. Right. And you realize like humility is number one. This is the first thing I have to do, is stop telling myself that I am better than others, that I can be the judge of others, and really focus all of my effort on conquering my own battle within my heart. Save yourself or be saved, and thousands around you will be saved. Right.
Right.
And so we see that a lot. And I'd say, I've seen, even with my own tiny channel, and especially with the bigger channels like you guys, these attacks that come in and people want to criticize, people want to say, oh, they're doing this or they're doing that. We're going to see a lot more of that, because y'all are actually preaching, like not preaching, but you know what I mean? Y'all are actually spreading the message of Christ and pointing people to the ark of salvation. So expect the demonic attacks to ramp up. Expect these sort of schizo spurs to show up, because of course they're going to. I mean, this is really good work that we're seeing you guys do. And so I'd like to just say that a lot of us recognize what you guys are doing at Patristic Faith, especially. We've called it like the tank division of online orthodoxy, some of the heaviest hitters out there. So everybody, please go and sign up for the patristicfaith.com newsletter and support those guys over there, because I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing to see all of you come together and really put out some high quality, top tier apologetics work and articles and videos and all of that. And it's beautiful to see. So,
well, thank you. Yeah. A shout out to Father Deacon Dr. Ananias for his efforts. Yes. And organizing a lot of that. And again, there's still some tickets left for anybody going to Montanica this year.
Yes. I definitely wanted to bring that up. Orthodox Montanica, the second one. Before we go on, I would like to tell everybody, if you have any questions or comments or just want to support the show, you can do so by sending in super chats at the link, either in the description or I just put it in the chat.
Yeah. Send in some super chats and questions to Jerry.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then regarding all that judgment stuff, one of the things I struggled with is some of the more liberal characters at my own parish, my own small parish. And I was very irritated when 2020 came around, and even my own parish, I was vastly in the minority in regards to mandating certain behaviors to enter the sanctuary. And I refused to do it because from my perspective, I saw what it is. At the same time, given everything that we said, that would be me assuming that I'm filled with the energies more than everybody else.
Right.
And that was a very difficult, again, I think everybody, if they were wherever they were on their journey, 2020 and moving forward has all been a sort of learning lesson. That I was very frustrated with the Orthodox Church. I was very frustrated with the hierarchy. I was very frustrated with parishioners. Yeah. And even some of the people that I know that are very liberal, and they vote for politicians who support abortion and sexual activities that we wouldn't condone, and the destruction of national states in favor of a global structure.
Yeah.
And then I think about, and in my head, I think, oh, I can't believe they're receiving communion today. I saw what they posted on Twitter, because secretly I see what they like. I look through their likes. And at the same time, that also helped me reflect upon myself and realize that I am no better.
Right.
And that I actually need to have mercy, as my sins may not be as obvious, and but there's plenty of ways in which I'm just as guilty as somebody else who makes very obvious sins by who they promote politically.
Right, the harlot and the Pharisee sort of deal. Exactly.
Yeah.
One sins is on the open, and everybody looks at them and says you're a sinner, and then one, everybody looks at it and says you're a great person. Whoa, you are a really pious Christian, or you're a really spiritual person. And those sins are so deep that maybe the person can't even see them themselves, So 100%. There's actually a prayer that in this spiritual psalter of Saint Ephraim the Syrian that I did want to read on that specific subject. And maybe I'll get into that a little bit later. You said some things that made me want to comment on it. So like, I feel like a lot of people come into Orthodoxy from that intellectual sort of understanding, which is almost kind of flipped on its head. I've heard a few people say that, right? Like a lot of us came to Orthodoxy through watching debates or watching lectures and engaging with this theology, but that almost should come after the spiritual work of really just recognizing, right, some of these basic things of like humility and faith and things that maybe don't require an intellectual grasping, right? They say like the simplest peasant can understand Christianity if he just follows a spiritual father and goes to church and has faith and lives a good life. And yeah, with the lockdowns and stuff, a lot of us who came into Orthodoxy because we recognize this is the truth, were really disappointed when we saw that there were, oh, these people are liberal, or these people are bought into the mask stuff, or these people are bought into the stabby stuff. And I heard Father Josiah trying to talk about we should be charitable in our dealings with these people. When we know that somebody holds a wrong opinion in the church, right? And we should assume that they truly hold this opinion because they truly believe it's the truth. And they're in their own personal journey towards the truth. And so that's between them and God. And we should treat them with love and kindness and not judge them, because by, kind of drawing a line in the sand and being like, no, you're not real Orthodox if you wear a mask, even if you're right? Even if you're right about the issue, you can actually push them out of the church.
Right.
And so I think it's really important that people, again, fundamentals, learn humility and learn, the removal of pride and the walking away from that. And then you won't kind of see these sort of mess ups that even in my own life, right? Because I did come to it from an intellectual perspective. That was something I had to kind of learn. Now, there are, I believe, lines in the sand. Like in my own experience, I switched churches because right as I was about to be baptized, I was actually supposed to be baptized quite a long time ago. Our church had a lot of people that wore the mask and promoted the jab and stuff, but it was always a sort of, dare I say, live and let live, but sort of respect each other kind of protocol. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it was, you wear a mask or you're not welcome. And so I would have had to wear the mask during the baptism. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I just don't agree with that. Right. We're supposed to be protecting the ancient faith, protecting the traditions of the church. And at no point in time was it covered, your face during baptism. So
they didn't wear surgical cloth during the plague.
No, I don't know. But you know what I mean? These things don't even protect. Okay, I'm not even gonna get let's not even get into that. But I did not like that one bit, and I didn't like the idea of them saying you're not allowed in this place if you don't do this, right? So switched churches, found myself, and I'm grateful that I did, because I found a really great parish with a really great priest and everybody there. So I'm very grateful, and I'm very grateful to have. I think that was God kind of telling me, you're not ready yet, right? Like, take a little bit longer, take a little more time. And I look back to where I was at, to where I'm at now. I'm grateful that, Providence sort of worked out.
Yeah. I remember I got chrismated during 2020. And I refused to wear the mask. Luckily, my priest, he's 89 years old. I love Father Athanasius. He was also not totally convinced by what was going on, but the majority of the parishioners were terrified of what was going around. And so, but I refused to wear it. And so I had my whole chrismation without the mask. Meanwhile, I stand in a room outside the sanctuary.
Yeah.
So I stand outside the sanctuary, and then once it was time for me to have the chrismation ceremony, then I come into the sanctuary again. I was not going to put anything on my face, and did the whole ritual, commune, took the Eucharist, and then I go back to the adjacent room to watch liturgy on a television.
Yeah. Oh, Lord have mercy, man. But I mean, good for you. Good for you for still being there, right? Father Peter Hughes was just talking about this, saying, don't leave your churches. If you have to, stand out front. If they won't let you in, stand out front.
That's exactly what, and that's what was advised to me. Shout out to Subdeacon Mark. He's my godfather, and his wife is my godmother. And so Bobby, that was one of the things when I talked to Subdeacon Mark, because there was other people in the church, specifically all the young men, all the young men. There was me and two other guys. And shout out to Joel. He knows who he is if he sees this. Um, we were not going to go through with that. We already knew what, again, we knew the whole background of what was all led up to what was happening.
Right.
And so we weren't going to do it. And Subdeacon Mark said exactly that. We'll stand outside because at one time for one Sunday, they were going to do temperature checks. And I wasn't going to let a gun be put to my head to enter church to check my temperature.
Yeah.
And so we were going to stand, our sanctuary has a window to the side, and we were just going to stand outside the window. We wouldn't be able to see the iconostasis, but everybody in the sanctuary would be able to see us standing there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what their recommendation as my godparents kept being, was that, this is all part of working out your own salvation. Don't leave. I did. Obviously, I wasn't attending as frequently, and I would go to other churches, but their whole thing was, stay there, be the voice of opposition. If you're not there, who's going to say the opposite?
Exactly.
And so it's ironic then in trying to battle against it. Now, as it went away, I'm more deeply embedded into the church life and the community afterwards. So,
Mm-hmm.
I would say there's certain circumstances where I think some people should leave. Other circumstances, it's like your life in the church. It's like everything is providence. Everything is part of working out your salvation. And so it's like, well, geez, being part of this parish that's like doing XYZ, I guess I have to fight it. And if I don't, who else is going to?
Right. Yeah, it really is a case-by-case basis. And I mean, we didn't even get into the shutting down of churches for weeks and weeks, or the multiple spoons, multiple cups issues, right? There was so much more that came into the church that really was assaulting the church during this whole, pandemic. And it's a shame, but it is a case-by-case basis. And I tend to agree with what you were saying about staying there and fighting, because as a member of the church body, like, we need you. We need people like you and people like, who see this stuff, to stand firm and to fight for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even look at like Saint Nectarios or a lot of these saints that received, opposition from within the church themselves. And what did it do? Did it crush them? No, it helped them become a saint. It helped them in their salvation, just like you were saying. Work out your salvation.
You're talking about Man of God. Did you watch?
Well, I haven't seen it. I want to so bad.
Oh.
It came here for one day, and I was at work, so I missed it.
Oh, what was that, like March 27th or something?
I love Saint Nectarios, so I know his story. I've seen like documentaries about it, but I really want to see that movie, man. So
yeah, it's a good movie. I liked that one, and Island, and then there was another Russian one. I think it was called Demons or something. It was a.
The one guy at my church told me there was a movie called Viking. I think that was like a Russian film that you can watch on YouTube. I think it has something to do with Orthodoxy, but I don't know. Demon, I haven't heard of that either, so I definitely will.
Yeah, I have to. Don't quote me. I don't know if that's the title, but it's about, basically, it's another Fool for Christ narrative of a monk who everybody thinks is possessed by a demon. At the same time, the things that he's doing is like beneficial to the church, but then eventually you actually find out he was possessed by a demon, and eventually he exorcised. It's very, very interesting movie. Yeah, it's a very interesting. It's a Russian movie, so you need subtitles. But
I find the Fool for Christ
very, very good.
I find the Fool for Christ idea very fascinating. I don't even remember what the name of this one saint is. I have this app on my phone that kind of gives you a list of saints and Bible verses to read for the day and stuff, and tells you about the Orthodox calendar. I think it's just called Orthodox Calendar, but there was one a woman saint that basically would like wear like a dish rag on her head, and she would she was in a woman's monastery and would do the dishes for everybody and would drink like the dirty soap water and would walk around. And all the nuns were like, "This girl's a demoniac," and so they call this well-known person who eventually became a priest, and he was known as a pious man and stuff. Brought this priest in to see her, and he actually had a vision telling him, "Go see this woman. You'll know her by this cloth on her head," right? And when he shows up, all the nuns come out, and they're like, please, exorcise this woman. Like she's terrorizing all of us. And he kneels before her and it's like, God told me I would meet you. Please bless me. And she kneels before him, prostrates before him, and says, please bless me. And basically, all of the women monastics then felt horrible and were like, oh, we really messed up. And she ended up becoming a hermit, I think, at the end of her life. I really wish I could remember the name. So if anybody knows in the chat, please put it in the chat. But I find the Fool for Christ concept very fascinating. I love that movie, The Island, and I tell everybody I can to go watch it because it's truly an Orthodox movie. And that was
very Orthodox.
The first film I ever saw where I was like, wow, this is good. This is actually Orthodox.
Yeah, it really teaches the deeper. Again, because orthodoxy is a paradox.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to get people, again, you could read a lot of scholastic books and not understand the sort of paradoxical understanding of the humility of Christ and why the lowliness actually elevates you spiritually.
Right. First will become last. And,
right. And you can hear that intellectually, but then you think, okay, well, does that mean God wants me to be a poor street beggar? And then you go people to that extreme. It's like, nope, that's not it either.
Right.
And so it has to do with your humility. And I want to do a stream with Father Turbo. I need to text him after Pascha to do a stream on the uniqueness regarding the humility of Christ and how it relates to iconography.
Yes.
But
you've done good streams in the past about sort of explicating sort of the collapsing of dialectics and the paradox of orthodoxy. You really have elucidated that quite a lot, and I know that's not the stream you're talking about with Father Turbo.
Sure.
But I think that's a really good point that you brought up about it's not either or, it's both and, right? It is a paradox, and that is something that is hard to sort of initially grasp intellectually, but is true, right? In a lot of these situations, people always push it into one extreme or the other, and we see this. It's usually the royal path, right? It's usually both and.
Exactly, and thank you for your kind words. And I'm going to do a stream. I think the next stream I'm going to do is it may be a little clickbaity, like something like "My God's better than your God" or something. I don't know, but I want to do something talking about the Trinity because I've heard too many people talk about how well. We worship the same God, or Christians. I've met Christians or so-called Christians that don't believe in the Trinity,
right?
And they don't understand how the Trinity is so much more superior than an idea of God's like oneness, or just like God being total oneness or unity, or the universe, or it's like, no, the Trinity. That's that whole breaking down of both and is that with the Trinity and with the incarnation of the second person, there's nothing you can say about God that can't be true. Atheists like to say, well, if God is God, can he create a rock so big that he can't lift? And for other religions, if you're not a Christian, you would say, no, he can't. But in Christianity, we'd say, yeah, absolutely. The Logos, which created the universe, actually is eternal and came into temporal reality through kenosis, self-limited to human nature. Right. He couldn't lift the rock.
Yeah,
that he actually created.
Right. Absolutely.
And so there's nothing. So even though some people would say, well, that's an inferior God because he has to defecate or he has the sexual organs of a man. No, it's that you can't say anything about our God that he can't already do or hasn't done. Every single, well, God doesn't die. Well, God took on humanity and did die, but God is eternal. God is eternal and he's temporal. He's spirit and he's person. He's unknowable and he's knowable. Right. It's every single thing you could say about God. The Trinity is both.
And that's a perfect expression of God's love for humanity, right? That this infinite, unknowable mystery actually puts himself into a box so that humanity can know who he is, can know him. And actually through that box, it's like a doorway into true union,
eternity.
Into true union with eternity and with infinity, right?
Yeah.
That is such a pure expression of love, right? And this is why we love God.
Then that was the thing you're talking about earlier about somebody who's maybe less educated or sophisticated. It's like, that's why Christ taught in parables. This isn't an intellectual feat, although because it is the truth, it registers at every level.
Right.
But you could be, historically what they call dumb, not just like low IQ, but literally have cognitive issues.
Literally,
and you could actually be living a life where you're elevated higher than the person who knows all the theology and recants it.
Right. And we see that all the time, like with a farmer that is like just beaming light, right? And then these like Oxford scholars that are just dirtbags,
Right.
I mean, we see
Exactly. Because the reality of Christ and the reality of Christianity is accessible to everyone,
that.
because the whole thing is a heart religion. It's all tied to your heart. It's not a noetic. Well, it is noetic, but it's not a totally mentalistic phenomenon, although it will also provide resources for that level. So for me, reading Maximus and learning philosophy and knowing the difference between how it differentiates from all these other paradigms, that was the only way that I could get into it.
Yeah.
If I didn't have that, the aesthetics were a big thing for me, but I wasn't some people I've talked to, they didn't know anything about Orthodoxy. They just went to a liturgy and they were transformed from the inside out and understood it to be the truth. That wasn't me. It's like I was totally in my head. I needed a head conversion so I could convert my heart.
Same. Yeah, and there's something for everybody, right? And that's what's so beautiful about it. But like I was saying earlier, it's almost better if you can have that experience where you go to the liturgy, because we see people just get stuck in these traps and in these like pits of especially in debates, right? You see in debates all the time people who are very skilled in debating, but they don't care at all about the truth. So they could just have hour-long debates about this little minutia, and people love to do that. They love to get lost in the weeds and miss the big picture, And so if you can just come to know God, right, like in the real world without, having a scholar, that's almost better. But some people can't. And I had the same exact experience coming to learn about the truth of Orthodoxy through intellectual sort of pursuits. So there's something for everybody, and it's really amazing.
Yeah, and I think I've had a lot of debate offers, and I haven't taken them. The only one that I did was with Uber Boyle, which was somebody I already established a relationship with, because I don't want, at least my debates, and everybody has a different role. I just felt, at least where I'm at right now personally, is I don't want to be too overly adversarial with somebody. Now that has a time and a place. Just look at the church fathers, right? So that has a time and a place. I just feel, for me, I think it's more efficacious for what I'm doing. Really, I mean, maybe it's narcissism, but just to speak for myself for an hour and a half.
Well, and a lot of these debates have been done, man. They've been done over and over and over again. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like people, I mean, it is always good. You could always reach more people if you do a new one, but it's, it's the same thing. We see Jay Dyer, he still does the Twitter debates. He still does the Discord debates, but you get these people who want to debate him, and it's like, dude, he's done 3 of those debates already. Like, you're not going to bring a new argument, dude.
That's why I made a comment about the atheist, and God bless Dyer and his work. But the, atheism, it's, at least for me, it's like, man, it's who's still following, like that worldview, the worldview is so self-defeating that it's one of the reasons why I tend to spend more efforts on occultism, because I personally view occultism and where I came from, and maybe it's just my own preference, just because it's what my background, but I think that occultism is a real threat to people's salvation and like the forces in the world. And so I probably will do debates. Maybe I won't be as effective or good as Jay is. But maybe if it was localized into occultism or psychedelics or paganism or spiritual but not religious or something like that. But so many of them, are just they're just roundabouts, similar arguments, and they're efficacious for the people watching. You never really convert the person you're talking to. Right. And I would if I do debates, to try to convert the person I'm talking to more so than the people watching. And so Uber Boyo, for example, God bless him. He came on and did his Nietzsche thing. And then again, I steel man Nietzsche. So he gives his his perspective. Then I say, oh, well, this is what I think Nietzsche got right. This, right. And it relates to this, and this is part of the historical phenomenon. And And afterwards, he was very kind and very thankful for the chat. And it
Yeah, that's
wasn't to
good
try to
faith.
humiliate him. It wasn't try to mock him. It was just like, hey,
Right.
brother, we're friends. You're interested in all this Nietzsche stuff. It's fundamentally relativistic. You
Yeah.
keep talking about all this power stuff in the world and how you got to fight back. But again, you're like you're on a losing playing board if the whole point is to fight power with power, and you're starting with absolutely no power other than the establishment itself.
Right.
And then your whole worldview is relativistic, so it's going to be difficult. But
Yeah, I think
but
that
yeah,
comes down to picking the proper people to do debates with, right? Is the person going to actually come in good faith? Are they actually seeking the truth? Are they open to having their minds changed? And most people aren't. They're, at least in the debate bro kind of circles, right? That's why, we see a lot of our friends not taking every person that
right.
challenges them, because it's like, we know what you're here to do, man. You're here to spin your wheels. You're here to say the things that your fans or your,
Mm-hmm.
circle wants you to say, and your ears are closed. And it doesn't matter, if you can't actually back up your points, or if you have no clue about what you're talking about. It really doesn't matter at all.
Right.
Somebody in the chat wants us to define the noose for a Roman Catholic friend. Do you want to take that?
Sure. So the noose for Roman Catholics. So Roman Catholicism has an anthropology of a mind, body, and soul. And the mind is a sort of divorced concept from the body itself. And so the mind is up here, and it's your noetic mental faculties. And then you have the body, and then you have the soul. And this is similar to many of the anthropologies coming out of the Greek philosophical tradition. However, Orthodoxy has a concept of nous, which is a Greek word for the mind. So Plato had a similar understanding to the Catholics in regards to a tripartite anthropology.
Yeah.
However, his nous was purely just mentalistic, whereas the church fathers redefined this noetic faculty of the mind as actually your heart.
Right.
And so we call the nous the eye of the heart or the eye of the soul. And so we would then argue that your noetic faculties isn't just how many math equations you can know. We would say that somebody could have a very darkened heart and they could know a lot of different things about the world. But when it comes to the nous, the real noetic faculty of that person, they're not going to be able to perceive the world accurately and correctly. They won't be able to fully see truth, right? So truth is a who, not a what. So they really can't, when they look at the world, they can't actually see the full reality that is in front of them, because the lens, the perceptive apparatus they're using to look at the world is actually darkened by their own sin. And so Orthodoxy then teaches that your perceptive apparatus is tied to your moral life. And so
Right.
as
What you do is who you are, right? You
yes,
sin, you actually become more evil by
darken,
sin.
you
Yes.
lose God's energies, therefore
Yes.
you literally are closer to death.
Yes.
That's the idea.
Right.
And so Orthodoxy then teaches that this whole process, the spiritual life, is an effort to purify your nous through the acquisition of the uncreated energies of God, which then is a direct encounter with God. And so because Catholicism does not have the energies, you only engage with an analogy of God, because they follow Thomistic theology.
Yeah.
And so if you're a Roman Catholic, you don't ever actually engage with God. Love is an analogy. Truth is an analogy of the Trinity, or even if they believe in the Trinity. I know some Catholics don't even follow the Trinity anymore. I doubt Pope Francis does.
Right.
But the Orthodox teach that the energies are absolutely real. And so if you're listening to this, the only way you know who I am, if you don't know who I am, is through the energetic activities of me speaking and moving my hands and the way I dress, the way I look. All these things take energy. And so when you look at me as a person, you're only encountering my energetic activities. When we look at the Trinity as three persons, we're only encountering their energies, but they really are their energies. And those energies give an understanding of their essence, but that essence, because it's divinity, is totally unknowable. So we would agree with the unknowability of God, but we directly interact with God through the energies as we acquire the energies, as we engage and participate and be synergized with those energies, we cleanse the apparatus, the actual lens we're looking at the world on. And this would explain then why, when the coup happened, so many intelligent people totally got played by something that was very obvious to other people who weren't as educated.
Right? The wisdom of this world is foolishness, right? And the beginnings of true wisdom is the fear of God. I mean, absolutely. It's that's one of the things I found most convincing about Orthodoxy was the essence energy distinction and the concept of the nous, right? This is something that we can even experience, right, in our own walk towards Christ, that as we get closer, as we walk further away from sin, we start to see more. We start to understand more, and it's something that really, like, for me, was very convincing. I was just talking on a recent stream about how I just started to remember about 6 years ago where I was at, right? Before I had ever even come across Orthodoxy. I was, I don't know how much of my story, you probably don't know much about it, but I was a drug addict for a long time. And there was a period of my life where I was at the lowest of the low, and I really felt like I was very close to death. I felt like I was circling the drain. And I just had this sort of sense, this sort of noetic sense of the abyss that was in front of me. Like I didn't see it with my eyes. I knew it was there through a sort of deeper understanding. Like, okay, I'm approaching the abyss. I'm approaching this black hole that I'm about to fall into. And it's amazing that God was actually even able to, just through this small glimmer of light, just through, okay, truth, I'm going to seek the truth. I didn't know what the truth was, but just through seeking that was God kind of calling me. And because I went for it, I'm where I am now. And then I kind of forgot about that period of time in my life and just recently remembered it. It's like, wow. It's just amazing to see, I don't know how relevant that is to the news, but I definitely felt like there was a sort of a knowing that didn't come through the eyes. It was just, and the point I'm trying to make about that is that, sort of tying in with demonic influence, is that at that period of time in my life, I actually wanted to fall in, right? I wanted that end to come because I was in so much pain and suffering. I knew it wasn't good. I knew that sort of fate wasn't good, but I had actually been convinced, like, okay, just let it come. Just let it come. I just want it to be over with because the pain's going to be gone, which is a lie, is a deception, which is the end goal of all demons, is for you to die, for you to kill yourself, for you to jump into that abyss, right? And and I think, the nous is sort of our interaction with these deeper metaphysical realities in our world. And when we are filled with sin and when we don't have the energies of God, we are at the mercy of whatever is coming, and we don't have the tools, or we're not equipped to actually deal with it. We're not equipped to know how to do the spiritual battle, which is why the church is so important, because we're given the armor of God. We're given the shield of truth, the sword of truth and the shield of faith, right? I mean, the spiritual warfare is very real, and that's how I got on the path of knowing, okay, there is a God, and there is a reality to these non-physical, metaphysical things, is through these kinds of experiences. And then as I came closer into the church, I started to see more. My eyes started to open more, and so hopefully that explained the news for y'all. And I don't know how much time you have left, but I definitely will want to read this prayer, because I want to get your
go ahead.
Opinions on it. I think it's very fitting for anybody really doing any sort of online work about Orthodoxy or about religious things in general. And I think anybody who's ever been a priest or ever even talked about God, I think this kind of applies. So this is by St. Ephraim the Syrian, from A Spiritual Psalter, and it's called An Unstable and Indecisive Will. Frightening and terrible is the day of thy judgment, O our Savior, when secret sins will be revealed. Therefore I tremble, O Lord, and am embraced by terror, for my sins have exceeded all bounds. Be merciful to me according to thy compassion, O good and kind-hearted one. I look, O Lord, at my sins and become agitated, seeing their multitude. Alas, how did it happen that such misery has befallen me? My tongue utters marvelous things, but my behavior is shameful and contemptible. Woe is me in that day when secrets will be revealed. Others find my words immensely beautiful, but my deeds are repulsive. I teach others in the world how to order their lives, but I, who am the unfortunate one, myself indulge in the passions. All my days have passed and vanished in sin. I have not served truth for even one day. As soon as I began to repent with the intent to sin no more, the evil one always came and trapped me through his hatred. Woe is me, for voluntarily do I land in his snare. If I go out for a walk, I step out like a righteous man, like a sage. If I see another sinning, I mock and deride him. Alas, my transgressions will likewise be exposed, and I will be ashamed. Oh, better it were for me not to have been born into this world. Then this transient life would not have corrupted me. If I had not seen it, I would have no guilt. I would not have defiled myself with sins and would not have to fear interrogation, the judgment, and torment. As soon as I vow to repent, I return again and fall into the very same sins. The time I spend in sin gladdens me. I even think that I am doing something praiseworthy. Woe is me. Until now, I never considered that Gehenna awaits me. An evil will leads me into sin, and when I sin, I lay the blame on Satan. But woe is me, for I bring about my sins myself. The evil one does not use force to make me sin. I sin according to my own will. Be kind to me, O thou who art kind-hearted to the penitent. Forgive me my transgressions according to the magnitude of thy goodness. Accept, O Lord, the tears I bring to thee, and cleanse me from sin as thou didst cleanse the harlot. I realize, O Lord, that I have sinned. Spare me according to thy compassion. And I think that the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because, I mean, I really relate to that myself. People come to me and they're like, Jerry, I love what you're talking about. I love, that you talk about, this good stuff. I think that number one is always humility and remembering our own sins and remembering that we are not, because in YouTube in general, like, every other community that I've seen in YouTube, besides the Orthosphere, is in the idol making business, is in the making idols out of men. And I think that's what separates Orthodox is we understand that we are wretched. We understand that we're sinful. We understand that we're nobody's idol and that none of us, no human being at all can be the idol. And I think that's a beautiful example of, we can share all of this great stuff, but it doesn't come from us, right? We're not sharing our opinion. My opinion was to take drugs and to feel good. That's what Jerry wanted to do. Yeah. And when I discovered truth and discovered Christ, I at least am seeking to conform my will to Christ,
which is a lifelong endeavor, and that's the whole repentant journey.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was a great prayer. What book is that in?
Okay, so it's a spiritual psalter or reflections on God by Saint Ephraim the Syrian.
Ephraim the Syrian. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
This is actually a baptismal gift I got back when I was supposed to get baptized. It was early.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Stole that from your previous congregation. How dare you?
No. It's my current godfather. He's still my godfather.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful book. I highly recommend everybody check it out. It's really good.
Yeah. No, I thought that was a beautiful prayer.
Yeah.
And really, when you go on this journey, I find it very humbling. You get a lot of adulation for things that you create. And at the same time, it's very humbling because it's you don't really know of the impact that you can have on other people. And at the same time, we're all struggling with our own spiritual journeys. So to potentially, God willing, affect people in a positive way that leads them closer to his truth and his reality, it's really humbling. So it's ironic. It makes me just want to keep working, but at the same time not get too big of a head.
Right.
Because
that's the trap.
It's not me creating something, or I mean, it is me creating streams, but it's not me coming up with something. I'm trying to
God working
bring
through
a lot
you.
of things together. Yeah,
it's God working through you. And I think that this sort of temptation, this trap of egotism, of pride, and of putting ourselves above other people is so tempting and so easy to do, especially when you're doing work like this. And that's one thing I really appreciate about Jay, about you, about Tristan, is a lot of you guys seem to understand that through being Orthodox, right? And so you're trying not to do that. Like, even coming on my channel, right? It's a small channel, but it's not like, oh, I'm better than you. I'm not going to give you my time. Jay's done the same thing. He's given me a hand up, and has never treated me as inferior. And I really appreciate that. And I think that's an important lesson going forward for anybody, is that to remember humility first, right? And that doesn't mean we interact with everybody, but it means that even the spurgs out there, even the people that I make streams about, like the New Agers, and we point and we say, look at what they're doing. This is dark. This is evil. but pray for these people. We're not better than
Mhm.
these people. We were there at one point, or even
Right.
if we weren't, we have our own sins. And I think
Right.
that's very important to recognize. And I think all of you guys have made it clear that that this isn't like many of the other channels on YouTube in different spheres where people really much becomes a cult of personality and a self-idolization and an idolization of other men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, brother. I don't have much more to talk about. Going through my notes, I think that about covered it. We went for an hour and a half, and I really appreciate that. I was just shooting for an hour, so I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to talk with you and for you to come on and give us some of your time. I don't think we got any super chats, y'all. So
Oh,
please
come on, people.
like and share the video and comment if y'all
Come on,
don't mind.
people.
I know, but we get a lot of support, and I appreciate it. We have a small audience, and everybody has really helped the channel out a lot. So I appreciate all of you in the chat. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, David, for coming and talking with us. Really
Yeah, no
appreciate
problem.
you, bro. And
Rachel said she sent one to
oh,
CashApp.
okay. Hang on. Let's check this out now. Maybe I just didn't get the alerts on my phone. Normally I can look at let's just see. Oh, wait a minute. Thank you, Rachel. That's true. She says, for the great stream, guys. Happy Palm Sunday. Thank you, Rachel.
Happy Palm Sunday, Rachel. God bless you and your family.
Oh, she's the best, man. She's great.
I gotta reach out to her to do another stream soon.
Yeah, she was losing her mind last night, Rachel, on Henley Street. I don't know if you know, but our buddy Dangerfield Henley, we finally got him to make his own channel. He's such a smart dude, and he's got a new channel called the Based Lit Analyzer. He's been doing
okay. Yeah, I follow him on Instagram. Yeah.
Yes, check out his channel, man. It's really good. And he was blowing Rachel's mind. He was blowing all of our minds last night with The Great Gatsby. That was an awesome stream, and we definitely want to.
Wow, I have to check it out.
Yeah, we definitely want to boost that signal. We got a super chat from Andrew who says, "For it was cool meeting an E-celeb today. Good stream. That's my buddy from church." Yes, thank you, brother. Thank you so much. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And yeah, so devotional heart.
I think Kristen sent one too.
Okay. All right. Let's just see about this. So yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to our friends' channels because we're seeing so many great people coming up and making their own channels and offering their own unique perspective and their own unique set of skills. And it's really beautiful to see Allison from A Devotional Heart. Her interview with you was really beautiful. I swear I started tearing up watching it. I'm like, it was so beautiful to see you talk about your journey and how you kind of came into your purpose. And I thought it was a very powerful interview. And
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
She is such a sweetheart, man. I swear.
She's great. She's definitely great.
Yeah. And so yeah, Allison, our friends Kristen, Slow Boy Whiteboard, she just started a new channel, so everybody go subscribe to her.
Okay.
Yeah, Jay's been playing a lot of her videos on recent streams, so she's got some interesting videos. So we all like to support her. Our friends at the Crucible, they've supported my channel and our friends' channels a lot.
To the Crucible.
Yeah, your conversation with them and Father Ananias and even Brother Augustine, I believe, was in one of the conversations on the demonic. Those videos are really good, man. Very, very good. So I enjoy that. And y'all, if I'm forgetting anybody, you put it in the chat. They've got so many friends that have started channels, but I love all of you guys, and I really.
Well, Kristen said that she sent you a super chat.
I know. I'm looking right now. That's what. While I'm talking, I'm scrolling through my phone trying to find it.
Gotcha.
Kristen, where did
you
send
have to check out Dangerfield Henley.
Yes.
I saw a few things on Instagram, but I haven't seen his streams. I'll have to check out his one on The Great Gatsby.
Yeah, so his channel is actually called Based Lit Analyzers. So it's not. So if you look up Dangerfield Henley, you're not going to find it. You got to find it. But yeah, it's very good, man. He's a good guy, and we'd known him for quite a while, and just through talking to him, me and Jethro, it's like this guy's really smart. And I know Jethro had been harping on him for a long time. Start a channel, dude. We really want you to start a channel. And then I started harping on him, and then he did, and everybody's been loving it. So it's been great. Yeah, if one of the mods wants to link it in the chat, feel free.
Let me go subscribe to it.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Rachel was like literally messaging everybody last night. You have to check out this stream. She's freaking out. But yeah, thank you, Kristen. I see your chat.
Oh
Thank you.
yeah, Jepstein Effrey.
Yes, that's a good stream. He's having some technical difficulties at certain spots, but the analysis, right, of it was, I mean, we'd all read The Great Gatsby in school and never even thought about it from the lens that he sort of shared it through. So it's really interesting stuff. So I highly recommend everybody check that out. And everybody, I'm sure all the people in the chat here have subscribed to Church of the Eternal Logos, but people who are watching afterwards, everything's in the description. Follow him on Instagram, YouTube. Do you want? I didn't put your other channel, the Religious Studies 101. So do you want to tell people?
Yeah, after my defense on April 25th, I hope to start putting out videos over on Religious Studies 101, on like you know the 5 pillars of Islam, aspects of Buddhism. What is Shingon Buddhism? So just like straight objective, maybe 5 to 10 minute videos, edited videos. So they're not going to be, maybe once in a while do live streams with other scholars.
Yeah.
But the point is to not be apologetics, but just purely academic discussions about world religions.
Right.
And then hopefully grow that. I imagine a lot of people unsubscribe, which is fine. I expect them to. But then grow that. And if people then want, I wonder what his personal opinion is, or I wonder what it looks, the thumbnails, the background, it's going to look exactly like Church of the Eternal Logos. So then they can go over there, and that is more of a ministry. That is more of an apologetics page.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, man. Because a big channel like that, it's not easy to get to that point, right?
No,
Especially with the message that you're teaching now, or
right,
talking about now.
yeah.
And that's something, like I said in the beginning, that I really respect, is that you've taken not the easy way, but the way that it aligns with what as the truth. And so it'd be a shame to just throw that channel out of the into the garbage. I think it's a great idea,
Right.
to
Yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I prayed about it. Then I talked to my priest, and everybody seemed like that was the obvious choice, is use it as an academic channel. So I don't plan on being a professor at a university, but I already have a platform that has 80,000 subs. I would venture probably less than 10% of those people are Christian.
Right.
So just use that as a classroom, a religious studies classroom. And then from there, they can move into my apologetics classroom.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great idea, and I'm glad that you found some way to incorporate it and not toss it out entirely. Yeah, man. I think that's it. So thank you again so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Yes, and please keep at it, bro. We all love what you're doing, at least in the chat and in this whole circle. We love your channel. We love every time we see a Church of the Eternal Logos video. We know, you put a lot of effort into it. You put a lot of work, and you present it very well. And so it's always very fun and enjoyable and very educational and informative. So,
thanks. I mean, that is conscientiously, that is, I try to think out the entire thing before I do it. And so the goal is to put out content frequently of a substantive depth,
right,
that I can acquire people's trust. Because if they trust me and they see that I put a lot of effort into acquiring information, bringing ideas together to present information, that the goal is that the streams are so deep that no matter where you're at in your own journey, that you can get something from it. And so if you're really advanced, maybe it's useful, maybe it's not. If you're not very advanced or you're new to it, you can still understand what I'm talking about. Maybe some stuff goes over your head, but some you kind of get the idea. And the goal is that by the end of the stream, hopefully you see then the thesis of the stream that began it. And so then it all comes back full circle. And I've had some people, if I am able to do it right, they said, "Oh yeah, I didn't understand what you're talking about. You kind of use a lot of big words, but by the end of it, it just seems so obvious."
Sure. It's kind of like being the slowest person in the room, right? They say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I get that feeling a lot. I say it all the time. I'm a slow boy, but from listening to your channel, from listening to Jay's channel, I have learned so much, and it really is that sort of being around these sort of higher IQ, higher, more nuanced, more complex ideas, that it really does help people, even if they don't get every little bit of it. You know, they learn a lot from you, and it's a valuable service. And so I hope to see you, achieve more success in the future with this, and to just keep growing your business. And I will keep supporting it and shouting it from the rooftops. Everybody, go subscribe. Church of the Eternal.
Shout out to all the supporters. Shout out to Rachel and Andrew over at the Crucible, and shout out to Slowboy Whiteboard, Christian, fellow Hoosier. Shout out to the Green Feathers and Rat Tail. All the usual suspects. David Atkinson. So yeah, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you for having me on and for the discussion. We'll have to do it again another time in the future.
All right, absolutely, brother. God bless, and thank you again.
You as well.
All right, have a good night. All right.